Hi, everybody. Mitch Tannenbaum here. Thanks for joining me today for this week's Security News Update. In the Security and Privacy Alerts, the question, could what happened in Germany happen here? I think the answer is definitely possible. The Christian Democratic Union, which is one of Germany's largest political parties, was hit by a cyber attack in June, but they're still recovering from it. And now they're saying they don't think they can recover all the users' data, at least not now. The result of that is that they can't go off and proceed with the preparations for the elections next year, securely asking for candidates and such. And so I'm not exactly sure what they're going to do. They are the favorite to retake power in the next election. So given that, people are probably motivated to harm them. But could it happen here? I mean, we've certainly seen enough leaks. I think that the parties are doing better than they were, but they still get hacked, as we saw with Trump earlier this year. So who knows? Next, and this was obviously in the news all over the place, this is when a cyber attack meets the physical universe in the Middle East. We saw pagers and walkie-talkies blown up. So this is a physical attack. You take the supply chain. This is a supply chain attack. You compromise the supply chain. You steal the pagers and walkie-talkies. You insert explosives into it. And then you go off and figure out a way to launch the attack by way of some sort of cyber mechanism. I'm not clear what it was. Nobody's saying. The first attack caused about a dozen deaths and over 2,000 wounded. And the second attack, 14 deaths and maybe 450 wounded. Now, maybe people are not terribly inclined to be concerned about blowing up terrorists. But what happens if next time it's your kid's cell phone? In that case, you probably will not be as favorably inclined here. So it's an interesting problem. Obviously, there's a war going on there. And, whoever did this, likely Israel, said, it's war and you're a enemy combatant. The problem is there's a lot of collateral damage. In the reference department, the feds have released what they're calling the Cybersecurity Alignment Plan for the executive branch. And the idea is right now that all of the executive branch agencies do their own thing when it comes to IT and cybersecurity. And you probably noticed they don't do very well at it. So the idea here is, let's see if we get everybody singing out of the same page on the hymn book, and maybe they'll actually do a little bit better at cybersecurity. First, we actually have to get them to do what they're supposed to do based on this plan, and then we'll see how well they implement it. Next, in the software department, Google is upgrading Chrome to use post-quantum crypto. They had used already something called Kyber, which is a draft proposal that got kind of kicked to the curb. Now they're using something called Module Lattice Key Encryption Mechanism, or MLKEM. The idea is that MLKEM is a really big key, like 14,000 bytes. So that can have some performance issues, especially on small or slow networks. So, and you can't have both of these in place at the same time. And you got to have the websites and the browser both singing the same algorithm. So this is not going to happen overnight, but this is probably a good step, for the next many years. The idea being that if you are encrypting this stuff with post-quantum crypto, even if the Chinese capture it, it's going to be a much longer time before they're actually able to decrypt it. And remember, the whole strategy now, what the Chinese are doing and others, is capture as much data as you can, just stick it on disk drives or whatever you're going to stick it on, and hope you can decrypt it later. Next, in the patches department, Siri apparently has a slight problem in that it is giving away your data without any authentication. Not a great thing for Siri to do. So Apple has released a patch for that, along with many other patches. In iOS 18, there's a bug that allows Bluetooth devices to bypass authentication. There's a kernel bug that allows it to leak network traffic outside of VPN. There's a Wi-Fi bug that allows it to force a device to disconnect from a secure network, multiple Safari bugs, a bunch of other things. So if you're a member of the Appleverse, the world that Steve Jobs, thought was going to exist with no bugs, which was the case to a large extent when the Apple software was much simpler than it is today. That's just not going to happen with the software being as complicated as it is. So we can give that. Doesn't mean that Apple isn't doing a good job. It just means, the days of not having to worry about patching your Apple software and stuff, those are gone, and they will never come back. Next, back to Progress Software. They just scored a perfect 10. Unfortunately, since this is not gymnastics, perfect 10 is not a great strategy. This is with a piece of software called Loadmaster. It's a load balancing product used by large companies, and apparently the bugs allow hackers to execute commands at will. Not a great thing. Next, in the legal department, and this one I like because they actually arrested the SOBs. A 20-year-old and a 21-year-old were arrested in Miami and charged with stealing and then trying to launder what amounts to about 4,000 Bitcoin, which is worth $230 million, or was at the time they did that. They apparently figured out a way to go off and, literally mint money, but they used it for financing a lavish lifestyle, travel, cars, watches, whatever. But their OPSEC was operational security, not so good, which allowed the feds to trace them back to Miami, and now they are rent-free guests. This is not international travel. This is domestic travel. They traveled all the way to the federal penitentiary in Miami, where they will probably stay for quite a while. Next, in the breaches department, Delta Prime, which is a distributed finance protocol, lost $6 million after somehow their private key, which allowed people to mint money, got compromised. Not clear how. They're not saying yet. But this is tokens which apparently aren't worth very much. This is 1.1 followed by 69 zeros worth of tokens. They are exchangeable for actual real crypto that someone might want, but they couldn't convert it all. Otherwise, the losses would have definitely put these guys out of business. But what they are saying is they're looking at or trying to figure out ways to minimize the impact on their customers, meaning, sucks to be you. You shouldn't have invested this if you cared about the money, or you should have done better research to figure out whether these guys actually understood security. Right now, the objective is move fast and break things. We already saw that with the DJT crypto. It's just, they don't care. It's move fast, see if I can make some money real quick, whoever it is, and then we'll worry about fixing the bugs later, and it's not our money, so we don't really care. Next, there was what I call a good cyber attack. This was against a Russian antivirus company, or maybe it is a Russian virus company, don't know. We call Dr. Web. They had to disconnect all their servers from its network, which is not a good thing for a technology company, of course. But they claim, sure, we believe you, that none of their customers' data was stolen. Next, MoveIt, which is another piece of software from Progress. We talked before about Loadmaster. They were hacked, or they had a bug. They weren't hacked. They had a bug back in May 2023, and that affected literally hundreds of companies and 100 million customers. Well, we're still getting disclosures about that now. This time it was a Wisconsin Physicians Service Insurance Company. Boy, that's a mouthful. And they said they were hacked a year and a half ago. They applied the patch. They said they didn't think that any data was compromised, but now they discovered, well, maybe it was. They were. So of the about 3 million people whose information was compromised, about 1 million of those belong to Medicare, and the folks at Medicare are going to send these people a year and a half later a brand new shiny Medicare card with a different number on it. Next, if you're a government contractor, especially DoD, DoD has cleared the last hurdle to get the Title 32 part of CMMC released. That should be published in the Federal Register probably this week. And then Congress has 60 days to pass a law, which is highly unlikely, saying you were just kidding, and this is regulation from the DoD. They've been working on it for 4 years. We're going to throw it in the toilet. I don't think that's going to happen, but you can never tell. Nobody's safe when Congress is in session, so you never can tell, but I don't think it's going to happen. What that means is potentially, keyword potentially, that we could start seeing Title 32 part of CMMC in RFPs as soon as 60 days after it's published in the Federal Register. So stay tuned for that one. There's still the Title 48 part, which is the enforcement mechanism in contracts. So they would have to do things in an ad hoc manner, but they could do that. That's certainly possible. And so we shall see. But the CMMC is moving. The Department of Education has said, oh, yeah, by the way, in case you didn't really realize this, all that FAFSA data that you as a financial institution or a school is currently using, that's also CUI, controlled and classified information. And we're about to put out a notice of proposed rulemaking that says, here's how you have to protect it. So, from educated, security not so good in higher ed. So the financial institutions that help them, not worried about them. But boy, I'm not so sure about the schools. Going back to the cyber-physical attacks I was talking about earlier, these attacks, I think, are probably, obviously people say, if you're a terrorist, the attacks are not so good. They certainly compromise things, but terrorists are very good at taking ideas that other people come up with and making them their own, which I suspect is what's going to happen. And as a result of that, I think we should expect to see more of these. Next, after 4 freaking years, the FTC came to the magic conclusion that big social media is stealing all of our data and earning billions of dollars a year from collecting and selling it, which includes kids and teens. The social media giants' defense, which is really kind of bizarre, is that they don't have any kids who are users now. What they're banking on, of course, is their terms of service. It says if you're under whatever age, you're not allowed to have an account, but we all know that's total BS. So I don't know where that's going to go, but the FTC is certainly going to go after these guys. It's close to the election. Who knows what happens if the Congress changes, the administration changes, the FTC changes. I am not counting on anything at this point. But part of what the FTC is saying is there's nothing we can do. There's nothing that they're doing that is blatantly illegal unless Congress decides to pass some kind of new law. And lastly, the security news bites for this week. Tennessee School District sent $3 million to hackers by way of money mules. These are people who get the money, and then they forward most of it to hackers outside of the country. The problem is that these guys were really totally dumb. They didn't hide their identity in any way, shape, or form, so the feds found them and arrested them. So these money mules who thought that they were getting a work from home job may wind up being convicted felons. That's definitely a possibility. I have no clue how that's going to wind up. Next, you should be glad that you're not London Transit. That's agency that runs the buses and trains in London. They are going to have to manually reset 30,000 employees' passwords, and the employees are going to have to come in, show their government identity card in order to get a new password. So that's a pretty interesting project for sure, and they got to do it quickly. 2 weeks before the election, Trump announced, going back on the crypto train here, a new crypto venture, very short in details, other than the insiders are going to get a lot of money out of this, of which I assume he is one of those. And the rest of you're on your own. And I hope his software doesn't have bugs in it like, every other piece of crypto software. Not clear. Next, Craigslist founder Craig Newmark said is going to donate $100 million to strengthen U.S. cybersecurity. Part of it is going to be used for education, which is great, I think. The other part is to help critical infrastructure improve their security. Now, if he does that by giving money to people like Xcel Energy, I'm not terribly thrilled about that. If he goes and finds that, 3-person water district that serves 300 homes, yeah, I'd be pretty excited. That'd be a good thing because those guys just can't afford to deal with it. So we shall see what comes out of it. But he's donated other hundreds of millions of dollars before. So I think he's a good guy. And he said that he's going to donate all of his money before he dies. And lastly, YouTube removes tenant media from their various YouTube channels that they have because the feds have basically said it's a Russian disinformation farm, which it probably is, but the problem is I think they removed like 24 channels. I'm sure they'll come up with a new identity tomorrow if they haven't already and could be back on there. So this is a cat and mouse game. So with that, going back to CMMC for a second, this is getting real. If you need help, if you haven't already started, you really need to start like today. And if you need help, please contact us. We'd be happy to help you. But until next time, no matter what, stay safe. Thanks for listening.